How's everybody doing? Good, good. I guess we can get started. I think I don't have nobody to introduce me, so I'm gonna introduce myself. I was hoping I would have a hype man to get everybody pumped up, but I work with what I got, which is myself. Anyway, my name is Andre Fields. I think I know most of everyone in here. I'm a counselor in the counseling department. I'm also the director of ABO, so I'm assuming they want me to talk about racism and ABO and a little bit of counseling, so I'll try to mix and mingle that. Particularly, this particular presentation is going to have two focuses. The first focus is going to be related to the psychological experiences of Black males, specifically how racism, stigma, and discrimination impacts how Black males think, feel, and behave. And then the second part, I mix it up a little bit. I think I put in there that I was going to talk about a racially contextualized program designed for Black males. I decided to pull it out, and I'm glad I did. What I'm going to talk about in the second half is a concept that I didn't make up, but I've been working on. It's called e-racism. It's two parts to that. The first part is designed for Black Americans, which talks about unlearning inferiority. And the second part talks about, it's designed for white Americans, and that's unlearning superiority. And so I decided to talk about unlearning superiority, assuming that there would be more white people than Black people in here. So I won. I could have predicted that, but I got a little nervous. So it worked out. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to get started. I think I have an hour and 50. I don't have no help. I think I got like an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to talk for about 45 minutes and then leave. Oh, I have 1 hour. Okay, so I'm going to talk for 40 minutes. So that means I'm going to have to skip a few slides. So anyway, first things first, why does this matter? It's kind of a silly question, but sometimes, you still need to verify certain things. If you want to know why this matters, all you have to do is watch the news, watch a reality show, watch World Star, Hip Hop, YouTube, etc. And you'll know that right now race, as it always has been, but it seems like even more right now, it's a hot emotional topic in this culture. And so one of the blessings about America is that we have an opportunity to live amongst different people from different races, religions, traditions, languages, etc. That's a rainbow of people, and if you're open to the experience, you can get a lot of different information. You can be educated about life, society, etc. But on the other side of that coin, or the curse of that, is that when you get a group of people together who are all different backgrounds, different ways of thinking and believing, conflict and crisis is bound to arise. And so if you don't understand racism, understand psychology, understand people, more than likely you're going to get caught up in that melee in a way that you don't want to be. And so when I'm going through this information, the purpose of it, I guess, is to help everyone learn more about something that impacts our culture. A lot of times people discredit the amount of impact race has on this society, but I'm personally convinced that how we as a group, a culture, how we think, again, feel and believe and behave is impacted by race. And so first things first, there's different types of emotional responses that a person can have when you're talking about a discussion such as this. White people in general, there's 5 different responses, according to research, that white people have when you're talking about race. Emotional responses. Some deal with guilt, some anger, defensiveness, a sense of being turned off, and then just that sense of overall hopelessness. And so the goal, as you listen to this information, for you should be to not get too deep in your emotions, because if you do, it's going to affect your ability to think. And so essentially we're having this discussion. The goal of it is to solve a problem. Whatever problems you may have with race, as well as maybe people that you may know, issues that you may have, or conflicts with students, co-workers, whatever it may be. So again, as you have race pushed into your awareness this morning, don't get it too emotional over it. Black people, how they respond to race is a little different. Sometimes they can become disempowered listening to the information, listening to the stats. Sometimes they can get infuriated, thinking about their experiences, the experiences of people in the past, can get overwhelming and can produce anger. Some use it as excuse seeking. Some go into denial and some get white conscious, meaning they're too concerned about how the white people are responding to the information and they're not listening for themselves. So avoid that. I'm not going to deal too much with stats. I think we all know it's been considered a national emergency as it relates to the state of black male affairs. You can sum up all those stats and say that black males educationally, they come in last place on all measures of social success, first place on all measures of failure. That's nationally. This is more in our own backyard locally. If you look at Michigan, Mississippi and Wisconsin are the only two states in this country where life outcomes are worse for black children than Michigan. So when a child is born in Michigan, there's no other state except for two where they're more likely to fail. As it gets even more deeper in our backyard, that's locally Grand Rapids. This was big I think it was last year. Research was done and it was found that of the 52 largest cities in America, Grand Rapids was the second worst economically for black Americans, meaning the gap between white and black is wider here than 48, 49 other cities. All right, so why do black males fail? This is a one-question assessment. It's kind of a racially charged, politically charged question, meaning how you answer this is going to be pretty indicative of how you view black Americans. It's going to be indicative of how you verbally and non-verbally communicate with black Americans. It's a deep question, and it's something that I want you guys to be thinking about because I'm going to try to give an answer. All right, so when you ask that question, why do black males fail, and then you maybe watch the news or you have a discussion at the dinner table, you get all these different opinions. And essentially there's two camps that argue back and forth. One camp says it's all the system's fault. The other camp says it's all the victim's fault. And so essentially there's no philosophical compromise. Everybody takes their stance and they argue about it till the cows come home. And so our goal today is not to argue about it, but again, come up with an answer. And I think the best way to come up with an answer is, first of all, there has to be a shared responsibility. You can't play the blame game, not amongst ourselves and not even within ourselves. And so the blame game is this. My life outcomes are, from a black perspective, from some black perspectives, my life outcomes, the things that have happened to me, the place I am now is all because of racism. If you take such an extreme view there, that's not a balanced look. The other side blames the victim and they say it has nothing to do with racism, it's all about their decisions and their effort and their intelligence and their ability to do what's necessary to be successful in America. So what we're looking for is shared responsibility and balance. And when I talk about the psychology of racism, if you ever get bored enough to look up the definition of psychology, it basically means how genes and the environment impact how people think, feel, and behave. And so like I said in the introduction for this presentation, the psychology of racism is how racism, stigma, and discrimination impact how black males think, feel, and behave. All right, so real quick, I'm going to define 3 terms. Race is defined as a group of people categorized by their physical appearances. So basically in this country, how you look and even more, the color of your skin dictates what race you are. Racism is more of a cognitive thing as well as prejudice. Racism is the belief that people that look like me are better than people that look like you. It's a superiority, inferiority dynamic there. Prejudice represents the prejudgments and the assumptions that you have about a person based upon the way they look. So people that look like you are fill in the blank. And so those are 3 terms I'm going to be using off and on during this presentation. Discrimination is basically the unfair distribution of resources, accesses, and opportunities. And so when a person is being discriminated against, what that basically means is because of how they look, society is dictating how much and how frequently and how deeply they can access certain opportunities and resources. Systemic discrimination is what you get when you get a group of individual races in one organization, one institution, one community, and their racist biases and their racist perspectives, either consciously or subconsciously, begin to manipulate the practices of an organization. And so it can be covertly expressed, it can be overtly expressed, but sooner or later, everybody in America who's been conditioned, you get them in one place to be conditioned to be racist, you get them in one place, they're going to slowly but surely impact what goes on in that setting. All right, so why are we here? There's so many different factors, it's like a gumbo, all kind of different factors that can impact the life outcomes of Black Americans, specifically Black males. So the first thing you kind of have to try to dispel is the nature versus nurture argument. Whenever you have a group of people who are functioning in a similar way all over a country, you have to ask that question. Is this happening because of genetic predisposition, or is it the environment? And so I always try to use one stat to prove that it's not nature. And again, if you have that nature's perspective, you view the problem as an internal situation. You view the problem as something that can't be corrected. So when you're spending money, time, and other resources to try to educate Black males, it's considered a waste, because like no matter what you do for them, it's not going to work out because they're genetically deficient. And so the nurture camp says the complete opposite. It says that it's not that the individual is deficient or dysfunctional, it's that their environment is dysfunctional and insufficient. And so one statistic that proves that it's not a genetic thing, in my opinion, is a high school diploma. To get a high school diploma, you don't have to have superior intelligence, above average intelligence, or even average intelligence. You can have below average intelligence, and as long as you focus, use your resources, et cetera, you can still get a high school diploma. Black males, as it relates to that situation, they have the capacity intellectually to get a high school diploma, but at 14 or 15, they're dropping out. So that demonstrates that it's not a genetic thing. I'll put it a different way. I'll use this analogy. I used it before. Hopefully it works this time. Most people can jump 3 inches. It doesn't take superior athleticism, average athleticism, above average athleticism. You should be able to jump 3 inches genetically. But if you can't, what that means is there's something else that's playing a part in your inability to jump 3 inches. I'm gonna come back around that later. I don't know if I said it right. All right, I can get this one today. The other thing that people will say, they'll pull the poverty card. They'll say, the reason why Black males are struggling is because of poverty. It has something to do with income and resources, et cetera. One stat can prove that that's not correct. Poor white males do better educationally, meaning they have higher graduation rates, GPA, and ACT scores than Black males. So what does that mean? Black males who are raised in a middle class or upper class household. So that statistic alone means if a poor white male can outperform a rich upper class or middle class Black male, then you have to say that income, there's a variable more impactful than income. And it has to probably be their race variable that's trumping economics. So if it's not poverty and it's not genetics, what variables then account for all these gaps in statistical reviews? Psychological barriers, so that's my answer. The reason why Black males don't perform the way that they should, academically, socially, et cetera, is because of psychological barriers. What are psychological barriers? They're systems or ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that restrict performance. So an example could be a basketball player. In practice and at home games, he can shoot 99% or make 99% of his free throws. But when he's at an away game and he's being heckled by the crowd, there's pressure on the clock, et cetera, he can have, begin to have thoughts and emotions and physiological responses that can impact his ability to make a free throw that he normally would make. So why do Black males have psychological barriers? Simple answer. According to research, this is not me, and you really don't need research to know this, Black males are the most highly stigmatized category of American citizen. So out of all American citizens, no matter what type of color, what type of gender, race combination, no group is more targeted for discrimination, alienation, objectification than Black males. And so essentially what's going on, Black males are being raised in a society that is mentally and emotionally beating them down from a young age all the way through adulthood. All right, so in America, Black males have stigma. I'm not gonna go over this whole slide for the sake of time, but they live in a society where they're told you're inferior, you're irrelevant, you're a liability, you're a cost to the country. And they're told this at a pretty young age. And so they have that marked disgrace. And I think it's pretty important, pay attention to the middle part, but black males have been so strategically stigmatized that they have become a symbolic construct of aggression, ignorance, and inferiority. So when a person sees a picture of a black male, there's a series of automatic thoughts that are almost universal. Just like when you see a snake, just like when people hear lightning, when they see a spider, universally we have automatic thoughts. The system has so stigmatized black males that if you flash a picture of a black male in a group full of people, the majority of those people are going to have automatic thoughts that are negative. All right, so this is where it gets deep to me, because what's going on is this: when people ask me, why do black males drop out of school at 14 years old, 15 years old, in the juvenile system at 12 years old on such a regular basis? Why do they overrepresent just the juvenile justice system? Well, we all been through the identity formation years. We've all gone through that part of life, that stage of human growth and development where you're emotionally sensitive. You're looking for an identity. The world's a stage. I'm the center of attention. I'm trying to figure out who I am. Everybody cares about my little life. And as black males are going through that stage, they're understanding that the whole world sees them through a lens of negativity. And so what slowly but surely begins to happen is that in that psychologically sensitive stage, you're already trying to piece together the puzzle of adolescence, and now you're also trying to walk through a maze of racism and stigma. Sooner or later, those young guys begin to internalize and identify with those messages, meaning that they believe those negative beliefs and attitudes that society has about them. And so a lot of people will say, you know, why believe that? It doesn't matter what people say about you. Pull yourself up by your psychological bootstraps and outthink all of that stuff. This is why they can't do it, because they're too young. They don't have enough life experience to reference. They don't have the brain development, and they don't have the psychological sophistication to outthink a whole country. We've all had parents, it was especially those of us that may have had not the greatest parents. You can't even outthink what your parents say about you, let alone a whole country. And so, I'll try to give an analogy. Looking at Mother America, I always say America is the epitome of a bad parent. And this is what I mean by that. America has a set of twins. She has a black son and a white son. One's name's Michael, the other's name Malik. That's a black name, right? All right, so we got Michael and we got Malik. The thing is, Mother America raises those two children under two different principles, two different parenting styles. For Michael, her white son, she affirms him, she accepts him, she gives him empowering and positive messages about who he is, what he can do, what the future holds for him, etc. She lets him know that when you're done, when I'm done raising you, I'm going to send you out into the world, you're going to be successful. She gives Malik a totally different set of beliefs and messages and has different types of interactions with Malik. She tells him, you're stupid, you're just like your daddy, you're never gonna be anything, no matter how hard you try, sooner or later something's gonna go wrong because that's how you're wired. And so what happens is, when she sends them both out into the world, you can predict who is not gonna have enough empowerment to be successful, who's not gonna have enough self-efficacy and self-esteem to really maybe acquire the American dream. And so what do most bad parents do? When they both come home, what is she gonna tell Malik? Who you are and who you became has nothing to do with what I said or did to you. I raised you in the same house as Michael, and you chose to not do the right thing, not taking responsibility for any of the terrible parenting that she did. And so we know, thinking of America like a parent, for maybe one more slide, I think, we know there's probably two different types of parenting styles. You got a good parenting style, you got a bad parenting style. Try to keep it simple. And so, a good parenting style does this, and America has a great parenting style for its white children. We're all born with strengths, we're all born with weaknesses, whether they're intellectual strengths and weaknesses, emotional, social, etc. We all are born with a little bit of both. A good parent knows how to maximize their child's strengths and minimize their child's weaknesses. A bad parent does the complete opposite, or America does the complete opposite to its black children. The strengths that the black children have in this country when they're born, by the time they're 13 or 14, they're suppressed because of a bad messaging system. And whatever weaknesses that child had, whether they were emotional weaknesses, intellectual weaknesses, whatever, now those are beginning to rise to the surface. And that's kind of how parenting works. And so I won't go through this. That's some stages of internalization that a black male goes through. But at the end of the day, this picture represents the answer I give people when they ask me, why do little black boys drop out of school? Why do little black boys not want to do addition and subtraction? Here's a picture I think that illustrates that. Most of us, when we're born, we got some type of a glimmer of hope in our eyes, and we think we can do the things that we want to do. But we begin to run into people and situations and circumstances that slowly but surely tell us different. And so for black males, and because of society and because of the news and because, with example I always give is the Trayvon Martin. When a little Trayvon Martin situation, as a young black boy, when you hear or see that a grown man can chase a black kid into a dark backyard, shoot him, and come out and be found not guilty, that indirectly tells you that my life is not significant here. And so as you begin to see those things over and over, you become disempowered. And so whatever beliefs and strengths that you had in the beginning, slowly but surely, you begin not to believe that. So this, I'm not gonna go too deep into this, but when you experience those things over here on your left, socially, psychologically, this is the impact that it can have on you. And again, think of it like a parent. I think sometimes we just think of it as a people, but if you think about a mother or a father that raised you like this, how can you not develop some of those symptoms? And so, I think I'm almost done here. So race-based psychosocial engineering. Racial characteristics, how you look, determines what you experience in society, which then determines what you experience psychologically, which then accounts for your life outcomes, your ability to engage in the processes necessary to be successful. I'll skip that. So this is kind of the lie of racism. I think in the beginning I defined racism as people who look like me are better than people who look like you. This is the major lie of racism is this, and it goes back to superiority, inferiority. When the last maybe 20 slides I just showed you guys, for people, to me, this makes you racist. If you can't understand how living in that type of environment or setting can cause a whole group of people to be disempowered, you're functioning at a level of racism because of this. What you're saying indirectly is this: if me and my people went through what you and your people went through socially, whether it's in the past, present, or in the future, we would be doing better than you guys. But for some reason, you guys aren't just getting it. You're not putting enough effort in, you're not pulling yourself up by your psychological bootstraps, and that's why you're failing. So what people are saying is, again, people like me are better than people like you because we would be doing much better than what you guys are. Meaning we have the stuff necessary to overcome those things and you guys don't. All right, so why does racism exist? I won't go too deep into this because I only got 40 minutes, right? Okay, but I will try to summarize. I think it's on the next slide, excuse me. Why does racism exist? It's basically a human survival of the fittest situation. We're all kind of fighting for resources, and in this culture, there's so many different types of people fighting for the limited resources that society gives us to fight over. And what happens is this: we kind of understand that in order for me to survive, I need resources. And we kind of also understand that I'm more likely to get resources if I work with other people. So it's kind of human nature, again, to pick people who either look like you or who you think have similar experiences. And so what happens in this culture, in this country, is in the fight for resources, the race for resources, whatever you want to call it, we slowly, consciously, subconsciously begin to work with people who look like us. And we begin to ostracize or alienate people who don't, so that we can have the most resource holding potential. All right, so because of race and racism, we live in a color conscious society. So nobody's colorblind. And the best example I can give is like saying we're gender blind. It's like a woman in the armed forces saying gender doesn't matter. It's like a Muslim in America saying religion doesn't matter. It does matter. And so it's important that we keep it real with ourselves and know that, again, this is a racially charged culture, and this is something that we have to understand. I'm gonna jump down a few. So thinking about discrimination, and I'm going to go into race-related stress. Thinking about discrimination again is prearranged privileges and accommodations that you get in society because of how you look. Now, what is stress? Stress is something that we all experience from time to time. Stress is that internal feeling that you have when you feel like something can be taken from you or withheld. So if you're a student and you have an A in your biology class and your teacher says, tomorrow or Friday you have an exam over chapters 2, 3, and 4. Well, if you're a student with an A, that's going to produce stress because that exam has the ability to take away your A. If you're at home and you get a letter in the mail from your mortgager saying that, hey, you're 2 months behind and we're going to take your house, you're going to experience stress because something you have can be taken away. So thinking about race and racism and discrimination, Black people experience what's called race-related stress, meaning because of how I look, things can be taken away from me or withheld from me, whether it's my rights, whether it's my freedom, whether it's my dignity. Those things at any given moment, because of how I look, can be taken. And so what happens is, in the Black culture, we somehow, for whatever reason, walk around with a certain level of stress just because of how we look in society. And so when I'm trying to philosophize with people now, why do Black males die so early? It makes sense to me. It's because you already walk around with a level of stress that the rest of society doesn't even have just because of how you look. And an example would be, it'd be like right now, we all work at the same institution. It'd be like one day, and for whatever reason, you're labeled as that incapable guy, that incompetent lady. How did she get the job? She needs to be out of here. She's making mistakes. She's making us look bad. We're not being efficient as we could because of that person. Imagine if this institution ostracized and alienated you like that. That will begin to produce levels of stress that will sabotage your performance because you're now emotionally sabotaged. And so it's hard for especially white Americans to be empathetic to that because they don't really experience that. But that's just if GRCC did that to you. Imagine the whole world does that to you. Everywhere you go, you're reminded that you belong to a category of people who are inferior, incompetent, don't belong, etc. Race-related stress. All right, so these are some of the immediate psychological effects, according to research, of Black Americans who deal with high levels of race-related stress. Won't go through them all, but it's all bad. These are the long-term impacts. Okay. All right. Same here. I'm gonna try it again. I won't go through all these because it's all bad. But at the end of the day, it affects the Black male and Black female experience. And so this is kind of the deep part. You know, we talk about racial harmony, we talk about racial justice, but because of human nature, once again, racism will always be here, especially living in a capitalistic society where it's all about competition and win at all costs, et cetera. You're gonna find somebody to put under you so that you can ensure your survival. And so for Black Americans, Black males, racism is unescapable. No matter where you go, you're gonna have to deal with it. It's the reality of the situation. It's kind of like, I like giving examples sometimes. I think it's hard for people. It'd be like a beautiful woman walking into a locker room full of men. There's gonna be some issues there, right? There's gonna be some things that she cannot avoid, escape, or change. And so that's, again, the same thing that Black Americans deal with. Again, it'd be like a Christian moving to a Muslim country. Life changed, and he or she can't say religion doesn't matter anymore because you become that minority, that stigmatized minority. So when you're dealing with race-related stress, you have to have a way to cope with it. I won't read those definitions, but coping basically means the psychological processes you do to suppress the stress and just not go crazy. How do you deal with the stress of losing a home, losing a loved one, being stigmatized at work? The way that you cope is how you stay afloat and not, again, break down. And so it's different types of coping responses that you can have for a stressful situation. Solution-focused coping is the type of coping that people use when they have a problem that they can remedy. An example would be, you're not managing your time well, so you're behind on your to-do list, so now you're stressing. That's a thing you can fix. You can buy a planner, you can discipline yourself, manage your time better, and alleviate some of the stress you're experiencing. Money management. You're in the hole financially, got debt over your head, whatever, that produces stress. But if you take time out, be strategic, and slowly but surely you can fix your money issues. Avoidant and emotion coping strategies are strategies that are used when you're dealing with a stressful situation you can't change. So the perfect example to me is if your parents are getting a divorce, there's nothing you can do to change it. It's already done, they're getting a divorce. So you can't go in solution focused mode because you can't fix that situation. Someone dies, you can't bring them back, you can't fix that situation. And so we're more likely to engage in avoidant or emotion-based coping in those type of situations. So of course, research shows that black males are more likely to use avoidant-focused coping as it relates to dealing with general life stressors and especially race-related stressors. And that's, again, because you can't solve or heal or remedy racism. And so, again, you use maladaptive coping, which, I'm sorry, I should have said this, avoidant coping and emotion-based coping is considered maladaptive, meaning the results of that type of coping is going to hurt you in the long run emotionally and mentally. Whereas solution-focused coping, the ability to attack a situation, attack a task, and conquer it, is better for you mentally and emotionally. All right, I'm gonna jump a few slides. People who are engaged in maladaptive coping, and specifically black males, they engage in avoidant-focused coping. And this, for you people who have worked with black people, if you grew up around black people, and you see these behaviors and perceptions all the time. I'm doing work with ABO. At the end of every semester, we do a focus group. And almost every time when we talk about what are your greatest concerns, they all, as it relates to achieving your academic goals, the fear of failure is huge. And it makes sense to have fear of failure when you live in a society that's not built to help you be successful. A lot of black males anticipate catastrophe. They have a reoccurring sense of detachment, preoccupied with their weaknesses. They have a lost sense of direction, chronic pessimism. They make excuses. They devalue success, avoid responsibility, and self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is when you have a responsibility. This is something I have to do, but I'm going to create a problem that then removes me from my responsibility. And so what happens slowly but surely, coping is used to deal with race-related stress. And so the more I invest as a black male, the more time and effort I put into something, the formula works like this. If I put a lot of effort into something, I'm going to have more stress because society can, at the end of the day, withhold what I deserve. So I can go take my classes, I can take notes, I can pass my tests, get my degree, but when I'm done, I may not be able to get the job I want because of how I look and where I come from. And so what happens is black males begin to function consciously and subconsciously with this formula. The less I have to lose, the less stress I'm going to have. If you left your purse or your wallet in here today and there was $10 in it, you'd have a little stress, but you'd be okay. If you left your purse or your wallet and there was $1,000 in there, you're going to have a lot more stress. And so that's the formula that black males use. So the more that I'm working to achieve the American dream, the more race-related stress I'm going to have. And so what happens at the end of the day, it's called can't culture. At least what I'm trying to call it. I've been working on it. Can't culture is basically all of the maladaptive coping styles that black males use around the country. They come together to produce a culture. And so CANT stands for a cognitive and affective negativity template, meaning the way my schema works as it relates to filtering reality and filtering my life, it's a disempowering way. It sees the negative and it feels the negative and it responds in a counterproductive manner. So again, collective maladaptive coping equals a culture of failure, a culture of underachievement. I won't read the long definition. I'm gonna have to skip a few. Is that clock right? Can I get some help? Okay, and real quick, what time did we start? 9:30? So I got what, 20 minutes? Okay, all right. I'm gonna be done with this PowerPoint in 10 then. So this is how Kent culture thinks. I kind of talked about fear of failure, chronic pessimism, present-oriented, difficulty, delaying gratification, controlling impulses. This is how they feel, powerless, helpless, hopeless, as it relates to achieving American success in the traditional American way. These are some of their behaviors. Again, avoid responsibility, withdrawal, avoid goals, no long-term planning, etc. I'll skip that one. I'll skip that one. Talk about the bi-directional influence. So right now, Kant culture already exists. And so this almost is nature versus nurture. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Because what happens is this, American racism and Kant culture feeds the black male community. And so the racism, stigma, and messages of inferiority created Kant culture, and then Kant culture feeds itself. So long story short, if you take away American racism, Kant culture would keep itself existing. If you eliminate Kant culture and start from scratch, American racism will regenerate that culture. And so it's fed from different directions and they sustain each other, or they work together to sustain that culture. All right, so this is kind of where we make it, I guess, relevant to what we do on a day-to-day basis. Educating black males, another way of putting it is, how do I work with a person who's probably a little bit disempowered academically when I'm working with that person? And that's another way to say it as well. How do I work with this person? What do I need to do to help this person be educated? And when I say educated, we're all educators in one way or another. We are all a type of curriculum. We all are a lesson plan for somebody. Somebody's watching and learning from you, whether you're a professor in a history class, a counselor teaching emotion management, an athletic coach teaching discipline. We're all teaching somebody something here. And so it's important that you not let your racist conditioning, black or white, impact your cross-racial interactions, and it happens so much. So this is Marcus, formerly Malik. He had a name change, you know. Okay, all right, so this is Marcus. These are the different, I guess, barriers to his academics that he's gonna come to GRCC with. I won't read them all, but basically, the ones in black represent race-specific barriers. The other ones are general barriers, like parents not attending college. You can be any color for that. But in this culture, things like negative media influence, stereotype threat, race-related stress, national stigma, etc. That's something that only black people typically experience on a college campus. So the goal of it is somewhat of a miracle. It's a tough job. This represents a high-risk group, which means there are also high needs. That means you're going to have to over-deliver. Whatever department you work in, over-deliver meaning you're going to have to be conscious about how you present information, how you interact. It goes back again. I'll try to give this analogy again. If a woman walks into a male's locker room, the guy that maybe is trying to help her in that situation, he still has to be deliberate and intentional about how he communicates to her about how to survive in that environment, because she's going to already have her radars up. You have to have some level of case management, meaning the student that you, whether it's just passing in the hall periodically, or the student that actually comes to your office or comes in your classroom, you have to have some level and have to figure out some strategy for kind of case managing that student and checking on their progress and letting them know that you're somewhat concerned about their future. So GRCC, if GRCC fails Marcus, it's doing the same thing that most institutions do in the country. It's because they're going to have a lack of a diverse staff, meaning the black male is not going to see living proof that, hey, you can make it. If you take these courses, take out these loans, shovel your snow, put gas in your car, pay for parking passes, and do this for 4 or 5 years, it's going to pay off. And it's hard to believe that when you don't see living proof. They're going to come in contact with staff who have been conditioned to see black males in a certain way, and so they're going to be intimidated by black males. And so when a black male comes with a situation, they're going to kind of leak out their biases and their prejudicial posturings. All that stuff is going to manifest itself in those interactions. They're going to, and when they're communicating with black males, they're going to use biases and prejudices to inform themselves about this person's character and this person's ability. All right, they're going to be blind to white privilege. That goes back to the pull yourself up by your mental bootstraps. It's tough, it sucks to be you, but you still can do it. Not taking into consideration that as a white person, not what I have attained is not all about my effort and my ability and my intelligence. So I was assisted by privilege to some degree. They're going to have low expectations for the black males. They're going to expect them to fail. They're not going to have a strength-based approach. So when they're talking to that black male and interacting with that black male, they're going to communicate that inferiority thing, that communicate that I don't think you're really going to make it. You may tell yourself one thing, but you're going to communicate something different. And so most institutions, especially those in Michigan, because of Proposal 2, they use a cookie cutter approach, meaning we're going to give you this universal method of educating people. It was developed with white people in mind, and you guys are going to have to adapt to it. But the reality of it is people from different backgrounds need different type of learning environments, different types of information. If you're trying to motivate battered women, they need different information than battered men. If you're trying to motivate and empower Muslims, they need different information than Christians. And so it's the same thing with race. If you're trying to empower black Americans, they need different information than maybe a Hispanic American may need in this day and age, or a white American. And so one thing that we do, I guess, religiously is that we don't use science to build curriculums because it's not fair, it's not equal, it's not balanced. And so we ignore science and we ignore customer service, and we charge you for something that we know is not going to work. All right. Okay, so I think this is important in general, but especially for black males. You got to know your setting, and sometimes it's hard for people to be empathetic. And I always, when I'm talking to people, I think the worst attribute you can have working in a community college, is the inability to be empathetic, meaning the inability to understand that you're working with a group of people who are at a community college for a reason. They're not at Harvard, Princeton, University of Michigan. They're not even at Grand Valley, Western, nowhere. They're at a community college, meaning that they're coming here and they're challenged with things that other people aren't challenged with. And so you can't have a cookie cutter, I must be hungry. A cookie cutter approach with any student category of student here, but especially black males. So again, it goes back to that logical balance. As an instructor, as a counselor, as an administrator, as a dean, the approach you take, is it his fault that he's not doing well, am I part of the system that's reproducing his underachievement? And so if you take a logical, balanced approach to me, you have to say it's a little bit of both. There's something about the way this student thinks that's limiting his performance, but there's also something about this institution that's limiting this person's performance. And so now, with that understanding, I'm somewhat morally responsible to figure out what can I do, even though I'm a part of this institution, to make things better for this student. Okay, and so I'm gonna skip a few because I wanna get to the racism things. So when you're working with black males in those cross-racial interactions, these are kind of just 3 principles. First thing, rapport is gateway. In order for a black male, or even a black female as well, to learn from you is weird. But if any of you guys have ever worked in like the K through 12, you may have heard, you'll hear where black students will say, I'm not doing my homework because I don't like my teacher. Or I'm not going to class because I don't like my teacher. That relates to all of that mistrust. That relates to all that, the stigma that when you're a white male, you're a white female, you represent how the rest of the world thinks about me. Why do I want to learn from you? Why should I trust you? Why should I believe you have my best interest in mind? And so you have to find a way to build rapport with that person, a relationship. And you have to be culturally competent, and I'll talk about how to develop cultural competence. And you have to be somewhat invasive with your educational approach, meaning you have to try to use your interactions and the information that you present in your classrooms, you have to tailor it in a way that invades that person's way of thinking. And usually you can do that through storytelling or making it relevant to that person's specific life experiences. All right, so again, rapport is the master gear that gets things moving. First thing, these are some threats to building rapport. First of all, in this country, even though we got so many different races of people, we have very minimal, meaningful reactions between each other. And so what happens is we don't have a lot of understanding of one another, And so we fill those gaps of understanding with biases, stereotypes, what we see on TV, what our parents told us, etc. And so at the end of the day, we consciously and unconsciously or subconsciously communicate those biases to our students. And so nobody is a superhuman, meaning you can't be racist at home, racist driving to work, and now I put on my uniform and my work hat, and now I'm no longer racist. Now I'm no longer eking out my biases on the student sitting across from me. And so this is something we've been working on, the white superiority complex. What does that mean? That's the sense that a lot of white people have that they are superior. And this sense can be strong, covert, overt, conscious, and it can also be subconscious. But this is how it was built. Of course, in this country, for many reasons, white people in every generation have successfully outperformed black Americans. At the same time, they've denied the impact of racism and discrimination on the black experience. So what's happening is we're successful, you guys are not successful. It's not because of racism and stigma, it's because of you guys. And so what happens is that gap produces criticism. It's kind of like the person you have in your family, and you might be this person, that never gets it right. They're constantly messing up, right? Always in the way. You get frustrated with them. Why don't you just take care of your business? And so what happens is, just like you can develop a frustration or an annoyance towards that person in your family who won't get it together, whites collectively have that frustration and annoyance with black Americans as well. And so again, what happens is they use that frustration, that imbalance, that superiority complex to justify racism, stigma, and discrimination. And so this is kind of the purpose of stigma and discrimination. The purpose of racism is to justify discrimination, meaning I have a right to withhold things from you because you're inferior and you don't get it right. Put it in reality. As a police officer, I have a right to pull you over because people like you do stupid things. So I have a right to profile you because of that situation. And we do that in the classroom. Because of who you are, I have a right to not pay you much attention because when financial aid checks come, you're probably going to be gone anyway. I have a right to do those type of things. And so I can't justify those type of behaviors without first stigmatizing you. Uh-oh, is that a tea timeout?
Questions?
Oh, yeah, where am I at with time?
You got about 15 minutes.
15, okay. Okay, yes. Come on, brother, man, you rushing me, man? All right, I'm just kidding. Okay, so race matters, we're not colorblind. You can't unlearn superiority. Here's some quick principles. I'm gonna try to get done in 3 minutes. So again, Americans are socialized to internalize biases. So step one, you gotta know your biases. You gotta really think about, when I see a black male, what are the automatic thoughts and feelings I have? That's the first thing you gotta be real about. The next thing you have to be able to do is celebrate the black experience, the black struggle, acknowledge it, honor it. Until you can highlight those aspects of the black experience, you're gonna have trouble engaging with black Americans. Empathy. When you see maybe a black male struggling, instead of judging, criticizing, empathize with them. You know, do that, but for the grace of God, that's me right there. I would be that same person if I had that same experience. And then teach them different ways to cope with their stresses in their life situations. Be yourself, be genuine, don't panic, expect mistakes. The reason why in the cross-racial interactions, people mess up so much is because they're trying not to mess up. They're overly concerned about not saying the wrong thing, not doing the wrong thing. The key is if you have rapport and you're genuine, most people in general, but a reasonable black person is going to give you some leeway. Okay, it came out weird, different, but because we have rapport, I know this person is genuine, I know they really care, I give them a pass on that. So expect mistakes, don't trip. When you see black males, don't look at it as them being immoral and not having the capacity to do well. Just think of it as a loss of morale. Again, if that was my experience, how motivated would I be? How much self-esteem, academic esteem would I have? This is simple. Watch movies and books that celebrate blackness. That's a good way, again, to acknowledge the black experience, learn to respect it, learn to honor it. My reason why I know this strategy, because when I used to go to GRCC, I didn't know much about Irish people. So I took a class, I don't remember the name of the class, but we watched, it was the Grapes of Wrath, I think it was. And so I watched it, and I learned about the Irish experience, and then for some reason, I just automatically started admiring Irish people. And so I took that with me and said, that's something that I think other people can learn as well with other races. Diversify your social network. If everybody you hang around looks like you racially, that's a problem. And you're not getting information about black people that's different from the information that the media, again, parents, peers, etc. You need different information by having different experiences. Spiritualize it. If you are a Christian, a Muslim, whatever religion you are, look at my ability to see the best in people, have faith in people, love people. Look at that as something that your Creator wants you to do. Thank you.